So let's take it live. Hello, I'm Zaraganat. Welcome to the studio. On Bank Holiday Monday, Easter Monday. And I'm going to be doing some more of this. Which actually means I probably want to unravel some of it. I haven't touched this. And I've been doing other things over this bank holiday, but yeah, so I was going to do something different, but I actually am not in the mood for anything different. So we're going to do something same. How much of I don't really have. Yeah, actually we're not that far off finishing. This triangle comes to a point, then basically that's the end of it. So we're not actually that far off finishing this rug, which is good. So let's fasten it back up and carry on with where we left off from. Although we're not that far off finishing, I don't have any black wool. I won't have any more black wool until at least Tuesday of next week at the earliest. And yes, I am. I was thinking and I was unscrewing this clamp, not screwing it down. You got to sort of think backwards when you're doing things underneath a table like this, because you tend to look down on them, whereas of course you need to look up. Tea, it's nice. Sometimes tea is nice and sort of fresh, sharp almost. This is, yeah. You might notice I've clamped that. Well, you might not have noticed, but I've clamped that back at an angle because for some reason this cloth seems to be at an angle. Oh yes, yellow. Gotta get through the green. So I did two. That's purple. There's three there, two there, two there. That's just I did that. So I'll come this way until we get back to the yellow. Then I'm going to fill the yellow in there, and then that's that repair done. Okay. So let's unravel some more wool. Yep, so I've spent some of today playing with Node-RED and databases. JavaScript still has me a little bit what's the word? Confused programming in JavaScript, but I'll get used to it eventually. The trouble is when you're doing it in Node-RED you have limited debugging available to you, and so sometimes things that would be obvious in a different environment where you've got a debugger is not so in Node-RED. But I have been, if you're at all interested in things like home automation, then Node-RED is certainly something that seems worth looking at. I've certainly found it easier to do things in there even than trying to do them in other home automation tools. But that's potentially partly because I want it to do very specific things, and I haven't been controlling light bulbs yet. lights or anything like that. This has been things like doorbells and bins and stuff like that, which is different. Good evening, Wolfie. Nice to see you again. How are you? You're early? You were early? Yeah, I wasn't. I was having my tea and some food. It's a pity more chips wasn't around because I've been eating chips. So, did you? Hopefully, you enjoyed your the rest of your birthday on Friday. Friday, yeah, Friday. I'm already lost track of the days. I've got to go back to work tomorrow, and I'm not actually even sure what day it is sometimes. Change my glasses so I can see what I'm doing. You're doing alright, but still my lungs. It's alright. I'm not sure what still my lungs is. Oh, that's good. Well, at least you know what? It's still. It's the my lungs bit that I didn't get. I was going to say, if you were a Yorkshireman, a Yorkshire person, it was alright would be about the highest praise you could give to something. They say a Yorkshire person, Yorkshireman, is understated, and it's alright is really high praise for something. Unless you mean lungs. Right, sharp needle. Sharp needle, canvas. And I can see it this time. I think I've just put my other glasses on. Nearly finished. Well, nearly being a relative term. There's still about 8 inches to a foot. But it's a lot closer. I'm actually beginning to think I might have enough wool to finish this, apart from the black, which I know I'm already short of. Well, here in the UK today we've had snow. It's actually been snowing outside. Which is kind of weird because the temperature yesterday was about 10 or 12 degrees. The forecast temperature for tomorrow is 10 or 12 degrees, and today was snow. Which kind of feels somewhat odd, especially in the middle of April. Although, having said which, I don't know what it is about a studio. Well, maybe it's the lights, I'm not sure. But as soon as I start broadcasting, it doesn't have to get warm in here. Right, still got some green wool here, so I'm going to just use a bit more of it. And then we'll fill in that gap. So I'm kind of looking forward to this week for no other reason than I'm actually looking forward to next week. Because next week things happen, which I'm not going to say anything about just yet, but it happens, and then other things can happen. I'm being really cryptic. but it's sort of very sort of slightly exciting. I'm not excited, but exciting. You may well be, Wolfie. And that's as far as I'm going to say. I shall leave that comment on the table. Fast blowing. Yeah, well, what happens next week will enable that. It isn't that, but it will enable that. Of course, what I've now got to do is check whether the place I was going to go to still actually exists and still offers that course, because quite frankly it's about 2 years ago now that I looked all that up and sort of got everything sort of sorted as to what I wanted to do, so to speak, and I haven't looked at it since. It's been that long. Yeah, the lesson. It's been almost yeah, it will be coming up for something like 18 months, and that I've been waiting for next week, and to enable the course. So I'm gonna have to have a look, go on the internet and find out if I can still do it, or if I've got to find somewhere else. Some of the things, like, I don't know, a cross stitch kit or scraper board or even rug making, I can sort of afford to, if you like, just buy the stuff and find out whether I like it and sort of learn how to do it as I go along. But glasswork is a little bit too pricey to just try it and buy it, try it and see. Okay, that's fair enough, Wolfie. Enjoy the game. Hopefully you'll win, and we'll get a bit further in completing this rug. And that's my mistake fixed. I must throw these bits of wool away. I was about to say no reason for keeping them. There is no reason for keeping them. Let's throw these bits of wool away. Actually, along with that as well. And since I'm tipping them on the floor, I'm going to do it the other way, which is to get the beam. And we'll put the bits of wool in the bin. Not the piece of wax, but the bits of wool. A piece of Captain tape. What are you using Captain tape for? Sticking something down with Captain tape. I don't need the plastic. bits either, they can go. What did I undo with the captain? What did I do with it? Why did I get the captain? I've got myself puzzled now. Captain tape, it's special tape, high temperature tape, withstands high temperatures. And still sticks, so it's good for things like 3D printers. But I've had a piece out for some. Oh, I know what I used it for. Holding a key. Yeah, when I repaired the laptop that's there, I took the keyboard off, and I did something silly. I broke the keyboard connector, or rather, I broke the fastener on the keyboard connector. The keyboard connector is a ribbon cable going into a connector, and there's two styles of connectors. There's a style where the latch flips up, and there's a style where the latch moves across. And this one looked like the style that moved across, but it wasn't. So when you did that, when I eventually managed to get it to do that, it broke off because it was meant to do that. Tip up. So the keyboard cable is put in, which is enough to fasten it. It's the latch is just there to put pressure on to stop it pulling out. So it was in, captain tape over the top, because it's the only tape that I had that was decent to hold the connector in place. Actually, not that laptop, Lady Sava's laptop. That's another thing for next week. A new one of those. Well, it may take a little bit more than a week, but finding a decent laptop. Don't necessarily want one that's she doesn't game, so don't need a gaming laptop, but a reasonably sort of high-powered laptop. Mostly she reads the internets and email. Actually, she also reminds me of the history of computing, because how quickly your web page builds obviously depends on a number of things. How fast your PC is, how fast your connection to the internet is, and how fast the other end is. And on most fairly decent internet connections, it's the speed of the other end that's the important factor. And of course, some of these sites are little more than pages of adverts with an odd bit of an article to attract you to see all the adverts. And they have a lot of stuff on the page, well, a lot of adverts on the page, and very little stuff, which they then spread out over several pages so that you have to read even more adverts. Well, not read them, but look at them. But it kind of reminds me of the early days of the internet, because of course these days you have web pages which are in some cases are megabytes big, especially with sort of some of the the adverts which are pictures and animations and contain JavaScript and all sorts of stuff. And my experience of the internet is before there was an internet, actually, and when the internet came along, I was using, well, I just at that time got a 1275 baud modem. Yeah, not bits per second, bauds. Slightly different thing, similar idea but slightly different thing. And that was after having my first modem was 110 both ways. Then I got a fast one, I got a 300, which was a sizable thing. Then the 1275, and before symmetric 1200, and it went up from there. But I can sort of, remember back then, if you didn't, well, when you started, you didn't have the World Wide Web as such. You had news groups, which I gather are still used a lot, but not many people sort of, they're kind of an older user or to know about Usenet. It's kind of an open, hidden thing on the internet these days, is Usenet. It used to be sort of the world bulletin board, and some of them carried photographs and things. You would always be looking. You'd look for the size first, and if it was anything over like 100 kilobytes, you generally speaking will go, nah, I'm not downloading that. I don't want to stay here for 30 minutes while that downloads. So that's why a lot of compressed formats came about at that sort of time, to sort of compress pictures down into very, quite small file sizes, just because people could not download them that quickly. And of course then you got the faster modems coming along. 1200, 24, they started doubling, 2400, sort of 32, and of course the limit was about the 64, or 56 kilobit I think was basically the limit, and you couldn't get much faster than that at the time. Then you went for the digital stuff, ISDN, which was a lot more, relatively speaking, a lot more reliable than the modems were. But you got 64 kilobits, and you could double it and have 128 kilobits. Now that was fast. Still is fast actually, for a lot of things. And of course these days, with ADSL, as it was called, I don't know what it's called these days, but digital subscriber line, when you started getting sort of 512 at the very early ones, both ways, or anything up to 8 megabits, boy was that fast. That's when people started having faster internet connections in their houses than many businesses used, sort of building to building. It was quite sort of amazing in a way. And of course at that time you couldn't think of anything really that would use the speed of sort of the 6 to 8 megabit line that you had. I mean, it was just an unheard of bandwidth really. And of course these days, 10 megabits, people consider 10 megabits to be really slow. And they're looking for things like gigabit connections and stuff like that. Of course, in some ways, partly because I've grown up with it, I guess I kind of find it a little bit funny with people who must have gigabit connections. Now for some people, some gamers for example, who understand the technology, and they understand it's not the bandwidth that they generally need, it's what they call the latency. How quickly does something that happens get transmitted from one end to the other, and gigabit reduces the latency. You don't use the bandwidth at all, but it does reduce the latency a little bit. And I'm sure some people can tell the difference. But what a lot of people don't necessarily realise is even with things like a gigabit connection, that does you no good whatsoever if the other end that you're talking to, like a website, is only sending you 10 megabits per second. It doesn't. People kind of don't realise that they have to have that end to end to be able to see it. And it's an analogy that I quite often use is think of an open, a new freeway or motorway, and you're the only car on it. You can go as fast as you like, but you if you can't get it on in the first place because there's barriers across the road, that's only letting one car every 10 minutes on. It doesn't matter. It's still going to take you 10 minutes before you get on. And then you can get to the other end really quickly, but of course you've had to wait 10 minutes to get on in the first place. It's kind of interesting that for things like motorways. Hello Eddie, good evening, welcome to the stream this evening. They're talking about smart motorways and slowing people down to increase the throughput to get people through, and it's kind of amusing because the internet works the same way as smart motorways. If everybody rushes and then brakes, the throughput goes down considerably, and motorways and sort of the internet works the same way. Everything rushes. And then it gets congested, so it slows down, and everybody slows down a lot, and then they speed up a bit, and it sort of seesaws like that, does the internet, until it achieves a steady rate. Motorways are exactly the same. It's kind of amusing that to speed up motorways, they're slowing them down. Kind of wonder whether you ought to do that for the internet. So, how did your programming go with your application, Adi, to do for your stream control? At the back end of last week, I got too busy at work to watch anything. So, did you manage to finish it, or is it still an ongoing project? Okay. Well, that'll give me. I was going to say that'll give me another opportunity to watch next week. Then I guess. That's assumed that you're going to be programming it next week. Although tomorrow is going to be really busy for me because with being off on leave all last week, I've got some of the end of last week's work to do. Tomorrow, and some of Monday's work to do tomorrow, so I've got to get sort of Friday and Monday and Tuesday into Tuesday. Yeah, that's right. You were doing it when I last saw you. You were you got some of this. I think you got some of the software to build the additional panels. Working, and I think you were able to switch between them because you implemented an edit mode But that was about as far as I saw. You got the edit mode switch working and colour coded it so it could be seen when you were in edit mode. I enjoy watching. No. Oh, they're on holiday, are they? Oh well. Oh well, at least in 2 weeks' time. That will give me. I'll be over month end, and I'll then have a couple of weeks of less strenuous activity until I hit year end, because my year end is in May instead of April. I enjoyed watching you do the programming because I like it's my same as my style of programming, which is do a bit, try it, make that bit do what I want, and then do the next bit. I don't tend to do great big monolithic program lots of things and then debug it all. So I kind of like watching people who program in the same way. This week I've been playing with something called Node-RED for Internet of Things, and it's a sort of a visual programming thing where you're sort of wiring modules together to do things, a bit like a jigsaw. And that's been an interesting sort of exercise because I've sort of did some home automation work a year or so ago, and that was really hard work, and this has been quite fun. And for no other reason than because I can. I was actually thinking of linking it up to both to Twitch and to OBS, so that the house will know when I'm broadcasting. And I'll be able to sort of put on and the house will know certain things about the stream as well. Yeah, that's true, Eddie. But a lot of professional programmers that I come across at work don't. They'll program for about a couple of hours before they run a sequence of tests, and then they'll debug. So they sort of they do module level programming rather than iterative programming. And you know the reason why I tend to program in that style is often I'm doing stuff that I've never done before. I've got absolutely no idea how to do it, and so I'm kind of just working out as I go along. Or it may be a completely new language. Like I've been working on JavaScript for the past week with some Angular thrown into that. I also did a little bit of Python, so I kind of sort of have to write in little small chunks just because I can't even get the thing to sort of, I will say compile, but to actually get to the stage of being able to run it. until I've fixed a lot of the things like syntax errors and stuff like that. I'm hoping sort of by, I was going to say this time next week, but slightly more than this time next week, I will be able to start looking at my glasswork course. Finally, after almost 2 years. Mind you, I also realised that if I wanted to stream, if I did start doing glasswork and I wanted to stream it, I'd have to buy another computer just to do the streaming, because there's no way I'm on a regular basis taking the desktop computer out there to where the studio would have to be. Any of the laptops I've got are not capable of streaming. The one that's next to me shuts down, it overheats and shuts down. And I haven't got anything that's got enough processing power to actually stream from, other than the desktop. Oh, it'll just be a one-day course. It would be, if you like, it's more of a taster type of thing. Oh, that's what I'm looking for, at least initially. So it's really to, because all I've ever done is watch people. I've never actually tried it. And whilst I think I'd love doing it, it's spending sort of £600 or £700 to get enough kit to actually do anything decent with. By the time you've sort of bought a torch, you've bought an oxygen concentrator, you've got a kiln and bought some glass, and you've got sort of a fume extractor system, then you've got a fair chunk of cash invested. And then to find out that actually I don't like doing this would be a little bit sort of expensive. So I just want to do sort of a day where just playing, if you like, playing about with glass, but with somebody who can show me the right way to do sort of some things, shall we say, just some simple sort of stuff, so that I know, if something's not working, it's because I'm doing it wrong, as opposed to it can't be done type of thing. That way, then, if I like it as much as I hope I do, then it's sort of, I can be reasonably confident in spending the money, since I've been saving up for a long time, and then. If necessary, then I can look at doing some proper courses of a few days direction, few weeks, whatever, so that length. But it does look like the nearest place I'd be able to do any sort of glass training is 50 or so miles away from me, so it's a lot of it is probably going to be self-taught. Ah, okay. It's an interesting thing, is whittling. I'd suggest getting some Teflon gloves if you haven't already. And I'd also, well, I'm assuming that you've got fixed knives. Don't use pen knife type things. Don't use folding knives with whittling, because if you catch them, you can close the knife on you. And lock knives are okay if you get a proper lock knife, but you can't have a flick knife because they're illegal in the UK. But yeah, either a lock knife or a fixed knife. Fixed knives are safer, but the sharpest knife you can find. What I was just going to do was just find, he says, what do I do with it? It'll probably be over here. I've just disappeared off camera because I'm looking for okay. I must get round to fixing this drawer. Okay, so that drawer's broken. There it is. What I was just looking for was yeah, a lock knife. I don't know the knife that knife in particular. In fact, what I was also just going to do was just show you one of mine. The lock knives are good because they've got a self sheath. Obviously, you lock them closed, so you put them closed and they protect themselves. Otherwise, these sorts of things are fixed knives. But yeah, a lock knife. It's got to be a lock knife because you need to lock it open. If you can imagine, sometimes what you can get with a blade is you're whittling. If you cut towards yourself, and you do that when you're whittling sometimes, although I suppose most time people look like they're working away from themselves. But if you cut towards yourself and the blade sticks and you pull away, the blade will close. If it's a lock knife, it won't. That's a Teflon glove. It's a glove with Teflon fibres woven into the material. And what that does is the Teflon stops you slicing yourself, which is what most of the movement is. It won't stop you jabbing yourself. You can jab through that if you've got a point on the knife, but it will sort of protect you from a slice. And of course, whittling is, generally speaking, you're holding the wood in one hand and you're working one way or the other. And so that is a really good protection mechanism. Only a few pounds. Can't actually remember how much these cost me because you only kind of need one. And they usually sort of, I was going to say buy handed. You know, a pair of gloves is good for two people. This has protected me about 2 or 3 times when things have just not quite gone as I was expecting. And you know what my knives are like, or you've probably seen them. They are razor sharp. Because the one thing that beginners always do, he says, having done it himself, you always dig in too much. It's a bit odd because you want to actually dig in quite a bit because that if you slice too thinly, then you kind of lose control of the knife. It's a bit too fast. So you kind of want to dig in sometimes, if only to make progress, and you sort of notch the wood or things like that, and that's when you put in a lot of pressure on. And if something happens, like the knife slides, that's when a glove like that is very useful. I've got, he says, thinking, where is it now? It's there. You can't see it anymore, but a long time ago I was using a fairly blunt knife. This is a long time ago, and I wasn't carving, I wasn't whittling. I was using like a Stanley knife to cut a hose pipe, and the knife wasn't that sharp, but it was sharp enough to cut me across the back of that finger, so I could see the bone. You can't see the mark there. Yeah, I think that, well, make sure that, yeah, Kevlar carbon fibre I think is the same. What did I say for these? Or was I describing these as probably as the wrong thing? They are Kevlar. Make sure they're a flexible glove like this. You can get some that look like rubber gloves. Have got Kevlar in them, which is they're sometimes described as like cook's gloves, fisherman's gloves. They're rubber coated. They're really stiff and they're not really great to hold. I said Teflon, did I? Yeah. Sorry, I meant Kevlar. It's a good job you were looking. So ones that look like a material like this, the ones that sort of look like a rubber glove, which have Kevlar in them, do the same job. But they are, I've got a pair around here, because I made that mistake. They're probably in my drawer, but they're really stiff on your hands, and of course they're rubber, so your hands sort of sweats in them. It's not very nice after a while. Yeah. It's one of these things that you probably never will, but the first time you do, you're glad you're wearing them. It is, and I mean it's technique, as I'm sure you're aware of. You don't use the knife uncontrolled, so you never use you never use it with your two hands unconnected, shall we say. You don't ever really do this. You shouldn't. Either way, you sometimes will do that if it's a very, very light cuts, but you essentially don't. You don't use it like you're sharpening a pencil. You've always got your hands connected, and if you've got your hands connected, you are less likely to cut yourself. I'm trying to think. There's a woman on YouTube that I watch that does quite a few things that she's not teaching, she's just showing you her doing it, and she sells them and things like that. Carvers workshop, wood shop. Let me just have a look. But she does like little figurines, and useful for inspiration, shall we say. Let's have a look, see if I can see who it is. Come on, show me my subscriptions. No, you're going to be awkward, are you? Okay. That one will do. Okay, if I have to, I'll scroll backwards. YouTube is really slow today. YouTube had a video out not so long ago. You know what it's like when you're looking for something, you can never find it. Oh, wrong one. Come on YouTube, you're going to show me a list of there we go. You're not going to subscriptions. That's I want to see that list. Thank you. Come on, show me. See. Yeah, okay. Carver's Woodshop, all one word. There you are. You found it quicker than I did. Yes. Okay, I'll have a look at showing my art as well, because I enjoy watching that sort of thing. She's got quite a few things, and as I say, I don't think she's specifically teaching as such, but you can she takes you through her doing all the steps of, you know, things like small figures and, you know, well, small figures, wood spirits, those sorts of things. So she used to put out quite a lot of videos. She hasn't been doing it for a while. What wood are you using, Eddie? Oh, okay. Let's see if I get anything. Yeah, for some reason tonight it's acting a little bit odd, is YouTube. Yeah, I've got the same thing. Internal server error. Basswood, yeah, good stuff. Oh, okay, I just tried going to the channel page as well, because I was going straight from the subscriptions panel, but yeah, no, basswood's a good wood to do that sort of stuff with. It cuts really nicely, especially for people who are beginning. And whilst you're whittling, you don't have to worry quite so much about grain. have to worry about it, but not quite so much. Yeah, actually, a Stanley knife isn't bad when it's brand new, but it's nothing like using a proper knife. And of course, the problem with a spoon is you really need a spoon knife to finish it. You can't get the bowl with a flat blade. Pine's an awkward one to carve. It's slightly less of a problem when you're whittling, but partly because you tend to do different things when you're whittling to when you're carving. But it can be a little bit of a problem, just because pine has got, if you look at pine, it's got a very distinctive ring structure, and the rings are the hard bit and the stuff in between is relatively soft. If you ever manage to cut through it, you can hear the juddering as you go through. It's kind of, da 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 da, because of the hard soft, which can sometimes be a bit of a pain in the neck. It's I at one point I tried, when I was first started carving, I tried using pine, figuring out that, pine was cheap, I could waste it. But what I found with more experience is that I spent more time dealing with the difficulties of using pine than I did if I'd using basswood, for example, so ultimately it was cheap. It was kind of cheaper to use good wood, basswood, than it was to try and use cheap wood. You didn't do too bad at the bowl. That's an old wine rack. Hi, okay. Hello again, Wolfie. It's really hard to get into a bowl. So if you've managed it, you've done really well. I guess with something like a lock knife, because the knife blade has got a curve on it, usually near the point, because they're usually sort of that sort of, the backs are straight but the blade is curved. You have a curved area to get at, but it's a really awkward thing to do. Spoon knives. You can get them as sort of a lock knife, but they tend to be more fixed knives. The cutting edge the blade is flat like that, so instead of being that way, well, they are sometimes that way, but if you think of it, the blade's flat that way, but it has, when you look at it from the side, it's got a bend on it. So I guess if you think of the blade sort of looking like that, that's your sharp edge of the blade, and the handle's here. Of course you can then cut in with the curve to make the bowl. It's a lot easier that way than it is trying to do it with a with a knife. But you can make a fork, or like a stirrer or a spatula quite easily with a flat knife. Okay, I think I'll have to do a permit, but that will be fine. Just bear with me a second while I do, because I'm typing on a touch keyboard and I can't spell. There you go. Yeah, he's still done really well to get in with a flat blade. Yeah, the curved blade. Yeah, that makes it a little bit easier to get in, because what you can always do is you shouldn't, but you can. Is you can scrape. You shouldn't use a blade for scraping because it blunts a blade. Get yourself a leather strop as well, Adi, and some polishing compound. .5 centimetre, yeah, not a bad knife length. And it's nice to see a picture with the person holding the knife properly. You know, he's got his thumb on the. I don't quite know why he's doing that, but he's got his thumb on the float or the weight so that he's not going to cut himself. Yeah, either a wooden strop, a piece of wood with leather on it, or just a straight leather strop. Because what you probably want to do is after every sort of about 10-15 minutes, drop the knife, which will keep it sharp. You've probably seen me do it with the chisels, but you do the same thing with a knife. Oops. Hello. We've got an Emmy. Oh dear, it's alright. We've got an Emmy coming to see us. Hello, Emmy. You're not too happy about being picked up, are you? Let's put you down. Here you go. I've never heard it called that before. I guess it's blue. If you use the handle as a strop, so the flap as a strop, it will go black and get covered in. Well, it'll get the polishing compound will get embedded into it. So as long as you don't mind that, it is the name of it. Okay. About every 10 or 15 minutes you want to strop a knife whilst you're using it. Curved blades are a little bit harder to do. Yeah, sure. No, I can follow. You will eventually have to replace the leather. It'll be, you know, a year or so, but you will eventually have to replace it because it just gets too smooth. I guess it gets so much compound in it and what have you that it gets too smooth to work properly. But you know, at least over. Oh, I thought there's only a little bit of snow. Bit of insulation on the tent, keep you warm. Yeah, stropping the curved front will be a little bit challenging to start with. Stropping the straight edge is relatively easy. It's just a matter of keeping the basically pulling and twisting the knife like that as you do it. Trying to keep the same angle, like whatever the angle of the cut edge is, as you move the knife. It's an interesting movement. Oh, towing people off. Well, yeah, I suppose I understand that. Yeah, there's been a lot of water just recently, hasn't there? And yeah, it certainly surprises me how many people don't know how to drive in those conditions. There's been times I've been on some fields a bit like that with a caravan, and I've had people in front of me getting stuck and all sorts of things coming off the field, and they're sort of just the car because they've had a tent in the boot, or the occasional person with a trailer getting stuck, and I've just driven out with a caravan. I've got soft these days, so I like staying in hotels these days. I used to spend a heck of a lot of time in Scotland, both in tents and caravans. Yeah. I keep cutting that off for no apparent reason. I used to love Scotland. In sort of weather like this, well, I say weather like this, where we used to stay, you'd have it'd be sun shining whilst it was raining, and there's snow coming down at the same time. And yet you go across to the next lock, because we were on the west coast. You go up to the next lock and the weather's completely different. And I've just thought, Adi, since you're whittling and you're going to be essentially at some point will be doing it in public, you'll be able to have the fun of making everybody cringe in front of you as you start cutting towards yourself with the knife. Actually, Eddie, so the thought has just crossed my mind. Instead of a Kevlar glove, it is always possible to use a chainmail glove in its place. Because you will see those for sale as well. They're often called fishmongers' gloves as well, because they are used by fishmongers. Only they're usually sort of stainless steel. But so you could always make yourself a pair of gloves, or a glove, because you don't need one for your knife hand very often. I have no idea how good aluminium would be. Of course, the thing that's kind of against it is you actually have to hold a piece of wood, and so I can imagine that being quite uncomfortable. Fishmongers they hold a fish down when they're slicing, so it's they hold the fish down and come underneath with the knives, or I guess they're cupping it rather than holding it, but you'll need to actually hold a piece of wood. So it might get a bit sort of uncomfortable on your hands, but there again, augment one trade with another. Yeah. I suppose aluminium might actually sort of bend too much, and you'd be wanting to use fairly small rings, so and that could get a little bit. I'd be inclined to buy one, to be honest. Yeah, micro. Yeah. Well, having done a couple of micro pieces just relatively recently, I wouldn't like to do a pair of gloves, to be honest. And it probably is cheaper to go to actually buy the fishmongers, the actual commercial ones. Kevlar ones are quite comfortable. And of course, since they don't look like they're Kevlar, most people just think you're wearing a glove. Yeah, I think I did a bracelet, just European 4-in-1. I think it took something like about 15 hours, and it was only sort of I was about to say it was only sort of about half an inch wide. Micro mail. It was about 8 rings across. And yeah, I also did. You were probably around when I did it, but I did I did a round mail. And looking back on it, I should have done that as a flat sheet and then zipped it up afterwards. But I did that as round mail to start with, and that was probably that was almost certainly a mistake, because that took an absolute age to finish. It's fun working with the little rings, but they are somewhat of a pain, just because you don't seem to make any progress. But I kind of do love them because it's just so fluid. Have you got? It's got a pattern on it, has it? Yeah, my wedding ring is actually too small, so that's why I wear that instead. He says, can't actually see what I'm looking at. Yeah. So this is a Greek key type pattern, so this one will actually stretch a little bit. It's platinum. I'm surprised that, I suppose rejoining platinum is must be quite difficult then. For gold, of course, they just cut and refasten. So what you should do, Wadey, then is make a I was going to say a necklace, but a chainmail chain to go around your neck on which you can put the ring. Which of course is something that I ought to do and haven't. I know when Lady Zara's wanted anything done to sort of rings, we've usually waited till we're in Greece, and we go to a particular jeweller that's over there that does his own work, and they've done all any work for Lady Zara for several years now, and one of the main reasons is that they are good, or he is, and they are not expensive. You know, a broken ring, for example, just, you know, if you had a ring which I think broke into a bit like one of these, but it broke into about 2 or 3 pieces, and I think they wanted something like about £200-300 to repair it in the UK, and took it over there. They repaired it in about an hour and a half, I think it was, and charged her €10. Ah, okay. You are one step ahead of me. You know, I've just the thought literally just crossed my mind, Adi. This sort of thing might be good for scouts. It's not. I mean, it's not as sort of as impressive as sort of, you know, using really sharp knives, but it's an easy craft. You know, you get something out of it at the end. It doesn't have to be this big. The materials is sort of normal knitting wool, canvas, and a tool. And the tools aren't that expensive. There's wooden versions or wooden handled versions with the thing. So it's something that you can, because it's coloured wool, you can make patterns or do what you like on the canvas. So if somebody wants I don't know, a picture of their favourite Pokemon or something, you can it can be done. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah. Well, from the point of view of cubs, this needle, it's about as sharp as a yeah. If you really sharpen a pencil point, it's about that sharp. But of course, it's stainless steel, so it can puncture. But it's I mean, I'm sort of jabbering myself. I'm not digging it in. It's not comfortable, but you know. And if you've ever given blood, Eddie, the size of the bore of this needle is about the same size as they use for giving blood. Just not as sharp. Yeah, you don't teach them to sew these days, then. The bit I don't like about giving blood wasn't so much this sticking these things in, and they are that size. And I used to give platelets, which is two of these, one in each arm. They used to jab you with a little lance in your thumb, and then take a couple of drops of blood for an anemia test, I believe it is. And that's the bit that you always used to hate. If you've ever seen the Hancock film, the bit, the jab his thumb, and then is that it? And can I get my tea now? And it's, no, we've got to take the blood. That was just, that's the bit that hurts. The needle, nah. You did saying recently, yeah. In that case, yeah, you'd probably be okay with this sort of thing. It actually strikes me, it's probably along the lines of a sailmaker's needle type of thing. It's not. It's about that same sort of size and probably as sharp as a sailmaker's needle. But yeah. No, it's probably more the parents that would be very wary, I guess, of them using something, a needle that looks like this. as you say. Yeah, they use electric jigsaws and probably axes and things like that, but give them something that looks like a needle. I'm surprised. For the scouts, it's axes and not chainsaws. I mean, after all, the chainsaws are used in so many games. Oh, sorry. I was just thinking then. One thing I haven't seen yet is a USB connector on the chainsaw. You know, to charge your phone whilst you're using the chainsaw. I think chainsaw manufacturers are definitely missing a trick there. Or come the zombie apocalypse, of course. You know, it's be a good way of charging your cell phone. You know, whilst you're protecting yourself with said chainsaw. Right, it's a bit difficult to judge because I might have to unwind and rewind this canvas to straighten it up, because I'm kind of, it's at an angle already, and it's making it difficult to judge whether this line I'm doing here is at an angle or whether it's straight. And I can't rely on the warp and weft threads because this canvas is stretched, and so they're not horizontal anyway. Yeah, I might rewind this in a minute. On this side it's more or less either the warp or the weft. I'm not sure which one it is, but one of them's the horizontal and one of them's the vertical threads. The horizontal threads are more or less straight with the stitch, so I can follow those across. Welcome back, Eddie. Right, let's rewind this canvas a little bit, straighten it out. Because it's at somewhat of an angle and that's going to be awkward. When you're doing this, you need at least one end held fairly tightly, because otherwise it just gets really awkward trying to what's happened is basically it's been pulled out. Okay, that piece of, so it wasn't, when I started it wasn't clamped down that well. And I was able to basically unwind it, pull it out. So it's really close to being, relatively speaking, really close to being finished now. I needed that piece of paper to put this on there because that gives a little bit of pressure just under the middle, because otherwise this tends to bow. Throwing it on your back when you bend down is not a good idea, but what you can see there is, yeah, so we've about a foot left to do, which isn't all that much. So what I'm now going to do is roll this back up again. This time you're not going to fall on the floor and you're not going to fall on my back. We're going to clamp you down before you get a chance. Of course, the best way of doing this would have been to use something like a split roller, which is kind of like a piece of dowel that's been cut lengthwise down the middle of it. So it's in two pieces, or it's in one piece with the end still joined on. So it's like a fork. You put the material in it, and a smallish dowel is okay. I guess though you've got to be careful of the length, so that, because you don't want the middle to bend too much. But it's like if you put it in, then you clamp these two ends together, and that sort of means the material is held fairly tightly. Of course, the other problem with it being a long one, if you do too small a rod, and it doesn't have to be round, it could be square, is that it will tend to spread apart in the middle anyway. So that's one thing I will, because I'd quite like to do another one of these, but not like this. So it may well be something like a piece of 2x1, which is what this is, cut down the middle, some thumb screws on the end to tighten it up so it clamps, and then have it pull it round off the edges so it will rotate or something like that, but having it in a frame where that's held, and then there's another piece of wood out here, and this just comes over the top of the piece of wood, but there's a gap in the middle, and you can hold it down and work that way. Just wrapping it around a roller like this is not fantastic, and it needs something on this side to hold it in that sort of position, and then you can just sort of use your own body weight to hold it and stop the canvas from, because if you don't sort of hold it, when you press down it sort of stretches and it's quite difficult to push the needle through. And now that I've straightened that out, that line is about as straight as a donkey's hind leg, especially on this side here. That's going to take, I haven't got very long to do it, but that's going to take a bit of stretching, a bit of stitching. What I have to do is start really tight here, create quite a large gap here relatively speaking, but pack a lot of stitches in so that they spread out a little bit, and then another large gap, so I sort of gradually just make that, bring this edge up till it goes straight again. That way you won't notice it quite so much looking on the other side. This side's not too bad, although it does have a dip in it. The centre bit's the straightest bit. So I've got the brown wool to do in to complete that triangle, and then we've got another triangle starting here, which I'll probably use the dark green wool for, I think, to match the other side. And the other side looks like that. You know what, that camera's moved, hasn't it? Can't quite see all of it, just about, but not quite all of it. There. Oh, that's really rather amazing. Totally accidentally, but I'm just looking at this design. It's kind of mirrored each other. That's purely by accident that I picked the black one to be the full one and this green one to be the full one, because originally I was going to do the whole shape the same colour, and I forgot. And so I did that bit, and I started the white, and I cut them both off there, sort of accidentally really, from the point of view. I could have taken the white one on to fill in this side of it, and just had the green at that end, as though the white goes over the top of the green rather than the green over the top of the white. So it's purely coincidental that the green is on top of the white and the black's on top of the green, but it works. And the multicoloured kind of makes a different background. Next time though, I'd use a solid colour, a single colour for the background. It makes life a lot easier, because I'm spending a lot of time here trying to keep these lines roughly straight and to each other. And a lot of the time it would be a lot easier to just sort of do blocks of all one colour. So like doing the triangles is nice and easy, because if the line isn't quite straight, it doesn't matter. You just fill some more in. You can't see the lines in here. They were done in lines, but you can't see them. You can sort of see them a little bit in person on the black, just because of the way the black is, I guess. But essentially you don't really see lines. Of course, on the multicoloured wool, it's immediately obvious. So I'd do a solid colour. I kind of feel like doing one, because this sort of shape, it sort of resembles a Star Trek symbol. I kind of feel like doing one with a deep blue background with a gold Star Trek symbol on, just because I want to do something with a deep blue background. But you could do flags and all sorts. Anyway, it's 9 o'clock, it's after 9 o'clock. So I've finished this for tonight. Not finished this. I've finished doing this for tonight. Since I am this close to finishing it, I probably will go on. Not tonight. We'll keep doing this on streams until I finish, and then maybe do something else. Don't know what. I keep mentioning this laser cutter I've got to do, but I think I might do that off stream. Build a laser cut off stream, but you never know. surprised I didn't jump backwards then. I've developed the habit when I drop something of jumping away from it rather than trying to catch it, just because if you ever drop a chisel you don't want to try and catch it. Yeah, that's a bit thin there, don't you? Sorry, I'm just looking. Yeah, maybe when we're finished I'll try and put a few more stitches into that area. It's a little bit loose. When you sort of bend it over, you can see a bit too much of the canvas, but well, we'll look at it later. When we're done, we can do patches like that and fill them in. The black is waiting for me to buy some more black, which I can't do until next week. These bits I keep cutting off, by the way, is a loop which is sort of the last loop. Sometimes when you're doing things like this, pulls out just because I'm cut it quite near to where it goes through the canvas on the back, and it pulls out on one side. So because it's ever been a loop, you know, the loops popped out. It's just a single thread, and which is twice as long as the loops are, so it shows up. But just trim them off. It's not really much, and of course it's you just occasionally I'm catching the wool on my fingers. My fingers' skin's a little bit rough. It helps to put moisturiser on your fingers before you start doing these sorts of things. Not immediately before, because you get the grease on the wool, but sort of a few days beforehand, so that you don't have rough fingers, because when the wool starts catching on your fingers, especially as you're unwinding it, it's a bit of a pain in the neck. Yeah, the black's a little... What's been happening with that? It's a bit sort of... I call it soft, loose. I was probably looking at it thinking, I'm running out and stretching it a little bit, by putting the rows a little bit too far apart. So I'd probably go over and add some more into that once I buy some more black wool. Yeah. Anyway, next stream should be, with a bit of luck, on Wednesday from approximately 7 PM UK time. We're on British summertime now, so that's an hour ahead of GMT. So watch out for the change there. Ask Google, it'll tell you in your own local time zones. So we'll start approximately, say, 7 PM, give or take a little bit. Usually give a little bit because I'm having an evening meal before I start the stream. But I hope you'll all join me then. Thank you everybody for watching. Hope I'll see you on the next stream. Bye for now.